Last week we had read that when Yosef was in the dungeon, he was responsible for two of the ministers of Egypt, the Saramashkim, the Sarahofim, the wine steward, and the baker. He was the equivalent of their valet, and each of them had a dream, and he interpreted the dreams. The Saramashkim, he interpreted his dream. The interpretation was that in 3 days, he's going to be reinstated to his original position. And again, he will put the cup on the hand of the Pharaoh. The baker, the interpretation of his dream was that in 3 days, he's going to be hanged, and his remains will be food for the birds. They're going to pick at his flesh. Yosef seizes the moment, the opportunity of the moment, and he says to the Saramashkim, as I provided this kindness to you, that I interpreted the dream, I want you to remember me and to mention me to Paro. I'm innocent. I am not from a family of slaves, and so on and so forth. But that was his request. So the Torah tells us, sure enough, in 3 days he was reinstated. The wine steward did not remember Yosef. It should say, he didn't remember Vayishkochehu. He intentionally, made every effort to forget him. His level of ungratefulness was to such a degree, not just, he just didn't remember him. There's no way I'm remembering him. Vayishkochehu. So Rashi cites Chazal, which is the Midrash. Vayishkochehu, meaning he learns differently. Initially, he forgot him. He did not mention him, and when a person, we say out of sight, out of mind, since initially he didn't remember him, he didn't say anything, Vayishkochehu v'achazman, v'achamikan. Afterwards, initially, if I didn't say anything, so ultimately it fades out. Because Yosef had put his faith in the Saramashkim to remember him. Therefore, the punishment was he has to remain 2 years in prison. Shenemar, David Melech says, Ashrei hagever shesom Hashem miftacho. Fortunate is the man who has put God to be his faith, and he did not turn to heathens. Lo botach al mitzrayim, Mitzrayim she'akrim rav. They should not put their faith in the Mitzrayim who called Rahav, the heathens. Ashrei hagever. It's interesting. Gever is a man. I mean, the word gevura means strength. So evidently, the basis why a man is called Gever is because he has a degree of strength. But fortune is the Gever. You may have strength. Asher som miftachu b'Hashem. Hashem miftachu. What is the source, the basis for his permanence, for his viability? Som Hashem miftachu. Hashem is the basis for his faith, for his assurance. That's the basis for his confidence. But if the basis for your confidence is yourself or some other mortal, that's not a basis. That's Ashrei hagever. Yosef failed, and he went to rely on the Rehovim, on the heathens, the Egyptian. As a result of that, he was punished, and he spent another 2 years in prison for that reason. So this week's reading begins, literally to the moment. Once the 2 years were up, Paro starts dreaming immediately, which is the basis for his release from Egypt, because the Saramashkim will share something he said, I should have said what I didn't say earlier, but now I will reveal something. And immediately they rushed him out of the pit. out of the dungeon. We know the Mishnah tells us that whenever God punishes or rewards, it's always mida keneged mida, measure for measure, negative and positive. Because you said 2 words, you should be remembered and you should be mentioned for those 2 words, you stay in prison for the 2 words. So there's a parallel. 2 words that you shouldn't have said, 2 years in prison. Now, what exactly is the mida keneged mida? We once mentioned, name of the Maharal of Prague, that the Torah tells us that when Moshe initially was sent to be the Goel in Egypt, the Redeemer, so Hashem gave him 3 miracles to perform before the Klal Yisrael to prove that he was God's agent. One of them was to take the staff, throw it on the ground, it will turn to a snake. The other was that he should put his hand into his chest area and it'll become leprous, and when he takes it out, it will no longer be leprous. The third was, you should take water, pour it on the ground, and as it touches the ground, it turns to blood. Those were the 3 signs that he said, Pokod Yifko, those were the code words, and the Torah says, Vayamein ha'om, and the people believed. They believed that he is the Redeemer, he's God's agent to take him out of Egypt. So, Maharal of Prague cites a midrash when the Torah tells us, Vayamein ha'om, the people believed, Miyad poska shibut. The bondage ceased at that moment, when they believed. So Maharal goes to explain, what is belief? Why is belief in God, what does it undo bondage? The actual physical bondage. What relevance does it have? So he explains that how do we differentiate between the physical realm and the spiritual realm? The physical realm, everything is cause and effect. If you live and exist as a physical being, you're continuously affected. We're affected by environment. A spiritual being remains unaffected. He's not affected. A spiritual being affects, is not affected. So to be affected, that means, why do you assume a certain opinion? Why do you assume a belief? Why do you have certain perspectives? Because these are the perspectives of society. Your values, morals, your ethics, that's societal values, ethics. So what's that indication? That you've been influenced by what? By your surroundings, by your peer groups, by what you've heard. So that means you're an effective being. You're totally effective and impacted by your physical existence. If that's the case, the way God deals with that person is within a physical context. You believe you have to do it yourself, otherwise it's not to be done. Okay, so again, you're depending on who? On yourself. That's on the physical. The world at large, especially at that moment, were not monotheists. The Jews were in a pagan society, Egypt. All of a sudden this man says, I am God's agent, and he performs 3 miracles. And they believe. What does it mean they believe? It's not they consider it. We'll consider what you have to say. It makes sense. They actually, unequivocally, they embraced what happened, what he had said. He is the Goel. He is the representative of the God of our forefathers. He will take us out of Egypt. To believe, despite the environment, despite the beliefs of the nation, despite the beliefs of the master, that means you're saying, I am an unaffected person. Being unaffected, that's a spiritual posture. That's a spiritual posture. Man was endowed with what we call free will, bechira. What does God want you to choose? To do or not to do? To do is always to give into your inclination. That means you're affected, you're drawn. The bechira, free choice, will is exercised in not to submit. It's always the contrary. Not to be. So the whole concept of free will really is going in the direction is not to do what you want to do. What you want to do is because where the physicality draws you. That's I'm inclined to do. Don't do what you're inclined to do. Inclined means that means you're an affected person. Unaffected means I'm reining in not to be affected by my desires, by my drives. So that itself, so utilizing bechira in the proper context, The proper application is really an expression of spirituality, of the spiritual person. That's what it is. Therefore, what is the concept of bondage? Shibud. There's no one who's more limited and controlled than a slave. A human being's a slave, he's a chattel. Your actions, your movement, your existence is not as you choose it should be. You're totally dictated and directed by your master and influenced by your master. So total being influenced, controlled, that's the concept of shibud. So who's subject to that? A person who's controlled and influenced by an outside factor. If you live your life to be controlled by an outside factor and an internal factor, which is all physical, then you could be subject to more of the same, because you are that being who's subject to be controlled by whatever it may be. But if I'm a person, I am not subject to be controlled, to be influenced. Outside factors, I reject them. I'm unaffected. It says you're unaffected by that. I'm unaffected. Nobody could really affect me. You remain unaffected. If that's the case, the bondage ceased immediately. When it says they believed, miyad posek hashibud, the shibud stopped immediately. Now, Yosef himself was in prison. He's already 10 years. He's reached a point, it's almost like bikashak v'leishek b'shalva. He's been suffering. He's been in prison for 10 years. Now he sees he has an opportunity. He's able to leave because he just did a favor, one of a kind, to the minister who has direct access to the king. An opportunity. So he takes advantage. Uzechartani v'zkartani. Remember me and mention me. It's considered a sin. That itself, that you were drawn to that, to rely on a human being, especially an Egyptian, that means you were affected by your situation. You were affected because of your desperation, rather than having faith in Hashem that He will take care of it, which is not a normal human reaction. God will help. God helps those who help themselves. You got to help yourself. You have an opportunity. When the iron is hot, strike. The opportunity is not missing. Yosef, you just failed. Because you're following the nose, the direction of everybody else. The Chofetz Chaim, he gives a phenomenal martial allegory to bring at a certain point how most the world leads its lives in perspectives and actions and many things. He gives a marshal that he says, this is already in the 1800s, early 1900s, that in Russia they had very deep forests. And when would the lumberjacks go into the forest to chop lumber? In the winter. Why? Because the ground was frozen solid. So the ground was frozen solid. They'd be standing on a solid footing, and they'd be able to log the logs, to chop down the trees and bring in the logs, okay? Once spring sets in and the ground begins thawing, the mud was so deep, you'd get stuck in that mud, you never could get out. And they'd have to travel miles into the forest. So the only way they were able to get out, to leave, they'd have to leave before the ground starts thawing. It was only when the ground was frozen, covered with snow, okay? So what would they do? They would go in with wagons, rather than having wheels, they had sleighs on them, skis, and they was pulled by a horse. These horses were so trained, the driver didn't even have to direct it. They knew exactly how to go in, they knew how to go out, these horses. That's how well they were trained. So what would be after being in this frozen environment for 2.5, 3 months, cutting wood day and night, and only resting to cut more wood? The foreman would pay each lumberjack a wad of cash. Where do you think this lumberjack would go? The first stop off at the tavern, buy himself 2 bottles of whiskey, whatever it was, and he would drink himself drunk, and he would get in this wagon. He'd whip the horse, and the horse would start going outside of the forest. Okay? Because they knew they had to leave before the ground begins thawing. The first lumberjack, he drinks it down, he's in a stupor, and the horse is going in a certain direction. He wakes up, and he feels the horse is going the wrong direction. Meantime, the ground is covered with snow. You have sleighs, you have skis on the wagon, and the lumberjack, who's drunk, begins whipping the horse to go in the opposite direction. So what happens? So instead of the horse going in the right direction, which it knew where to go, out of the forest, it turns around and goes deeper into the forest. The next lumberjack comes, and he does the same as the first one. Drinks quite a bit. He really doesn't have a sense of direction. So the horse is going, he believes, in the wrong direction. But he sees the tracks of the previous sleigh driver. It's going back in, it's going the other direction. So he whips the horse to go follow that. And each one who comes out of the forest, rather than going out of the forest, is going deeper into the forest. He says that's the reality of life. You know, you have trendsetters. It's worse than the blind leading the blind. And everybody's following everyone else. But why is that person following? Because he saw something and he evaluated, this is a proper choice, this is a proper value, this is moral, this is ethical. And how do you know that? Because I saw the way this person is behaving and acting, what it may be, and he is really the role model for society. Maybe not. Maybe he's in the stupor, he's going backwards rather than forward. But so a person who's influenced, who's affected by his environment, by his surroundings, that person is a physical being. The person who does not succumb to the physical influences, that person is a spiritual being. That's a spiritual characteristic. Not to submit to your desires, to your temptations, to your drives. That means you're an affected person. Physically, everything is affected, it's cause and effect. A spiritual person affects, is not affected. Therefore, as a result of that, when Claudius said they believed, the shibud ceased immediately, the bondage. Because bondage is the ultimate level of being affected, and because they just demonstrated a posture of ineffectiveness, therefore they cannot be controlled any longer. That's how the Maharal explains that. Now, of Yaakov's children, the only one who merited that his grandchildren should be tribes was Yosef. Ephraim and Manasseh were Yaakov's grandchildren. They were not his children. He did not raise them. Yosef raised them. And nevertheless, they were tribes, not children of tribes. Ephraim and Manasseh, Reuven, Shimon, Yuli. Ephraim and Manasseh like Reuven and Shimon. So the Gemara says that initially, Yosef was meant to have 12 sons, 12 tribes. That's what he's meant to have initially. So why did he only have 2 rather than 12? Because when he was nearly seduced by the wife of Potiphar, he lost 10 droplets of semen. So for each droplet of semen that he lost a son. He was supposed to have 12, he lost 10, lost 10, so 2 were left. So now the question is, to what degree was Yosef affected by this act of seduction? To the degree that he was overwhelmed and he lost 10 droplets. So to what degree was he a physical being? To be affected, 10 droplets worth. For each droplet, a year in prison. That's why he was in prison, firstly, for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, now he sees this opportunity to leave prison. 2 words. To what degree were you affected because of your situation and you did not have faith in God to rely on God? 2 words. Remember me and mention me. For each word, another 2 years. So because Yosef was at a level where he was an unaffected person, where he should have been, and he allowed himself to be affected, that established him to that degree, your spirituality has been compromised. So to the degree it's compromised, that's the reason why he spent 12 years in prison, and only after 10 years, another 2 years, was he released from prison. Paro begins dreaming. mentioned that Yosef's brothers believed that he was a pursuer. That the reason why he's tailbearing to the father is because he wants to disenfranchise his brothers, that to really depict them in their father's eyes as they're doing, as transgressors, as evil. Yaakov will curse them, and once they're cursed, he becomes the new father of Klal Yisrael. His children will be the tribes. That's the way they interpreted Yosef's behavior of the tailbearing. Okay? Yaakov says to Yosef, I want you to go to Shechem and see how your brothers are faring and how the flocks are faring. He goes there. They're not in Shechem. They're in a community called Dosan. Immediately they see him. They attack him. They tear off his shirt, this tunic that their father bought him. And they say, let's kill him. Because they believed he was a pursuer. So Reuven immediately intervenes. He says, why should we kill him? Just throw him under the pits, let him die. Through indirect cause. So the Torah tells us, they threw him in a pit. Haborek ein bo mayim. The pit was empty, it had no water. So the Gemara asks, if the pit's empty, it evidently has no water. What else is an empty pit? So the Gemara answers, it did not contain water, but it contained something else. What did it contain? Snakes and scorpions. It was a snake pit. They threw him into a snake pit. So Meir Simcha Vince asks, they suspected that his intention was evil. His intention was to have them killed, ultimately. To disenfranchise them. But if they saw that he was able to survive a snake pit, then clearly he's a tzaddik. If Hashem is performing a miracle, it's clear he's a tzaddik. So why did they should have taken him out immediately. So Meir Simcha says, of Dvinsk, that the snakes were in the walls of the pit. So the only one who saw the snakes is Yosef himself. So therefore the brothers did not see it. The Midrash asks a question, we know the most beautiful man who ever lived was Yosef HaTzadik. Why do we have for Pidyon Aben, Chomesh Shloim, 5 silver coins, right? Why? It's as an atonement for Bechiras Yosef, for the selling of Yosef. Why? Because Yosef was sold for 20 silver coins, which were Chomesh Shkolim, 5 Shkolim. Okay? So the Midrash asks, a man who's so beautiful, he should only fetch, when they sold him, he only fetched 20 silver coins when he sold to slavery. A man like that should have fetched a king's ransom in terms of how beautiful he was. So Midrash answers that because Yosef, when he was in the pit, he saw the snakes. He was so traumatized and terrified, when they took him out of the pit to sell into slavery, he looked like a corpse. So basically, they weren't really selling a living human being. That's why he fetched such a low price, okay? So the obvious question to be asked is, if the brothers were not aware of the snakes, if the brothers would have been aware of snakes, we understand the value of being thrown into a snake pit, that the brothers should appreciate that Yosef is not the Russia that they believed he was. He's a tzaddik. But now they were saying they were in the walls of the pit, and they weren't aware there were snakes. The only one who saw the snakes was Yosef. Why does God want to traumatize him? Just to cause him pain, to the point where he looks more dead than alive. What's the value of that? That's the question. The answer is very simple. Yosef had dreams. He shared it with his brothers, with his father. What did the brothers think? It's all nonsense. It's delusions of grandeur. That's what you believe. You're pompous, you're arrogant, self-centered, that's what you believe. We're going to bow to you, you're going to be our king, you're going to be our ruler, so on and so forth. So, but Yosef initially, he shared it because he believed they were prophetic. All of a sudden now, he's being thrown into the pit. A little like a dog, like a carcass. What does he believe? He says, maybe they were right. Maybe they were right. Here, I'm going to die. Those dreams are never going to come to fruition. So maybe they were as a result of my arrogance. There were delusions of grandeur. Because everything is It's hopeless. All of a sudden, Yosef sees snakes coming out of the walls. And he should be bitten, he should die. And yet, he's not being bitten, and he's not dying. What is the message, right? The message is, Yosef, I'm with you. We mentioned this last week. Yosef, I'm with you. He gets on, they sell him into slavery, they put him on a caravan going to Egypt. Normally the caravan carries what? Foul-smelling resins. Naphtha, whatever it may be. This caravan, Torah goes out of its way to identify what its cargo was. Perfume, sweet smelling fruits, lotus. Why? So Rashi cites the Midrash. Litein schar letzadikim. It's to give reward to tzadikim, not to cause them pain. This is reward. I mean, the man is going to be sold into the oblivion, but because there happens to be a scent, something providing a pleasant smell, that's the reward. Again, it's the same message. Yosef, although it looks bleak and terrible and hopeless, I'm with you. That's the message. Now, we speak about Hishtadlus. There's a question to ask. Why should Yosef be faulted for taking the initiative, for asking the Sarah Mashkim, remember me and mention me? That's what life's all about. God helps those who help themselves. So if God helps those who help themselves, what we call Hishtadlus, to take initiative. So Yosef, that's exactly what he did. He took initiative. Here he interprets the man's dreams. He feels the man feels he's beholden to him. He'll ask him, remember me and mention me. So why is he faulted so severely? You shouldn't have faith in him. This is not much of taking initiative. It's just making a request. It was a failing. So I think the way it has to be understood, if a person goes and he sees that Hashem puts him on top of a wave and he's riding the wave, and it's clearly nothing is attributed to him. For instance, he sold into the house of Potiphar. Within a short period of time, the level of success is beyond our comprehension. The master who's the chief executioner in Egypt, the man's a murderer. He appoints Yosef to oversee his whole household, all his personal affairs. The only thing he was involved with was with his wife. But outside of that, he had no knowledge of what was going on. It's all Yosef. What is that all about? But he's a slave. Could he be entrusted? That's the first loud identifier. Hashem is with you. He's accused that he attempted to rape his master's wife. He's thrown into the dungeon. What happens when he's in the dungeon? He becomes the quasi-warden. The warden says, it's all yours, you take care of it. You run the warden, you run the prison. Whoever heard of such a thing? And he's a foreigner in addition to that. Plus, he's a criminal. He's an accused criminal. He's going to run the prison. So what does Yosef, if you read the script as you should read it, which is obvious, Hashem is putting you on top of the mountain continuously, effortlessly. No effort. You're right there. Now you interpret the dreams. Rameir Simcha says, Vince explains, if you're going to be a viceroy of Egypt, the most advanced civilization in the world, normally a person has to go and to be mentored with all the etiquette of royalty. How do you behave in the royal court? How do you interact with ministers, with heads of state? Yosef was a pro. Where did he pick this up? Hashem provided him 2 ministers of Pharaoh's court, that he should be their personal valets. Yosef was a quick learner. But all that was to prepare him for that major ascent, to go to viceroy. He had all that mentoring, exactly all the protocols of diplomacy, of royalty, everything, he had that in place. So again, this is continuously being reiterated and reiterated and reiterated. Yosef has nothing to do with you. I'm there, I'm here, I'm giving it to you, I'm putting you there. So if you see it so clearly, what are you asking the man to mention you? What are you asking the man to say a word? It's an insult. It's a lack of faith. If Hashem, it's clear, put you, and it cannot be attributed to yourself as much as an iota, not for a moment. What are you having faith in this heathen? It's like a person's raised by his parent. There's no amount of money that the father did not give the child for any conceivable need, whatever it may be. At the end, after being catered to and provided with on the most generous level, he's short $50 and goes and asks a stranger $50. He knows the father will give him anything he wants. It's an insult. Here I've been taking care of you, and you know I want to. It's my pleasure. You go to a stranger to ask for it. Here I've been doing it all along. What are you going to a heathen to ask him to assist you? I'm assisting you. It's like a person can walk on his own and ask, could you please bring me a pair of crutches? Oh, you got it. What do you need a pair of crutches? You can walk on your own. So the best equivalent case I would give, a person is flying at the sound of speed. Yeah. Speed of sound. And as he's flying that quickly, he starts waving his hands like he has wings. Is there something wrong with him? Do you think doing that means anything? I mean, you're acting like an imbecile. That's all it is. That's how crazy it is. It's beyond absurd. Yosef, what you've seen, where you've been. What do you say to this man? Remember me and what? And mention me. Yosef, for that, another 2 years in prison. How could you be desperate after everything's said and done? How could you express yourself? How could you be in a desperate state? I'm here. I'm pulling you up. Zchartani, Viskartani, another 2 years in prison. So now, he goes, the 2 years are up. He's immediately rushed out of the pit. The Saramashkim, the wine steward, shares with him that there was this person in prison with him, and so on and so forth. And immediately he's rushed out of the pit, and he listens to the dreams. Now, you're coming out of the pit as a slave. You want to score on every opportunity. Minimally to be released. You don't want to be thrown back. They only took you out to interpret his dreams. You realize he could be put right back into the prison, into the dungeon. So seemingly, the average person, or the so-called innovative, smart person, he's not going to miss a beat on this one. Otherwise, he has to be a fool. Paro says, I heard you have the ability to interpret dreams. Yosef should say, it's correct. And say it with humility. You know, I just interpreted the dreams of the baker, the wine steward. It was exactly as I said it would be. Could have scored some points. Biladoy. It's unrelated to me. It's not me. Elokimi an Shlom Paro. God will respond and bring peace to Paro. Because he was distraught. He had these dreams. He didn't know what they were all about. Yosef, you have the opportunity. Take advantage. And continuously, he presents it in a way he could take advantage, score points. Yosef doesn't score points. He's not interested in scoring points. Why not? Because the answer is he learned his lesson well. Because if he would in any way take any initiative, that's considered a lack of faith. You don't need Paro to do anything for you. I'm here, I'm riding the ticket, I'm carrying you all the way. You're soaring. Vayishlach Paro, when he heard that this person in prison, that he has this ability, he immediately sends Vayikra es Yosef. He called Yosef Vayiritzu ben Abor. They rushed him out of the pit. Veigalach, they shaved him, they groomed him. Es Yosef Vayiritzu ben Abor. Vayachaliv Sebosov Vayavo Paro. And he came to Paro. What's the way to describe it? They rushed him. They rushed him out of the pit, and they changed his clothing. His whole predicament changed almost instantaneously. So the Deciphering says something interesting here. He says, as whenever God's salvation happens, it happens in this manner, like in a moment. in a moment. My salvation is close to come. It's soon to come. That's what Egypt. How did we leave Egypt? Here, they were driven out. They had no choice. They couldn't just walk out. They were driven out. They drove him out so quickly, the dough couldn't become leavened. There wasn't time for it to rise. At the end of time, when the Sheikh will come, suddenly, the Master will come to a sanctuary. The Shekhinah will come back. What do we do? Suddenness. Because whenever we speak about Geula, the transition, it's not gradual. It's instantaneous. Unexpected. That's what happens. Yosef didn't expect it to happen at this moment. He didn't know how long it would take. He knew he wouldn't be there forever, but he didn't know how. They rushed him out of the pit. Paro says to Yosef, I had a dream, and there's no one who's able to interpret it. I heard that you have the ability, listen, be attentive to my dream, to interpret it. Vayan Yosef is Paro Lemor. Yosef responded to Paro saying, Bilodoi, it's unrelated to me. Elokim Yanesh Shlom Paro. Elokim, God will respond and bring peace to Paro. How do you pass up such an opportunity? It's okay. It's okay. And he begins telling over his dream. With the sheaves of cows, it's one dream. Again, what God is doing, he's informing Paro. There will be 7 years of plenty, great plenty, 7 years of famine. And because the dream was repeated immediately, that's the indication that God is bringing it quickly. And then he gives him a solution, how to deal with all the issues. So when he heard everything, it found favor in his eyes, in the eyes of all the servants. The question is, it seems to be, the interpretation was a simple interpretation. 7 fat cows, 7 lean cows, swallowing them up. One is plenty, one is famine. The healthy-looking ears of wheat, the wind-beaten, all the same thing. What is this? Why is it such an ingenious interpretation? So he says something interesting. What were the interpretations of the other dream interpreters? You're going to have 7 daughters, and they're going to die. That's the fat years, the lean years. You're going to wage 7 battles, victorious, then you're going to lose 7 battles. You're going to conquer 7 cities, you're going to lose 7 cities. Whenever a king dreams, it's always something which is global. It's something which affects his total nation, the totality of the nation. It's not something which is limited. They interpreted dreams on a limited basis. Paro understanding who he was, this is the one it's about. Therefore, it didn't resonate in terms of meeting the criteria of what this interprets this dream. When Yosef came, now he's talking globally. It's the country, it's all the people. It's not only the people here, it's the people in the whole region are going to be affected by this. The commentators, or Chaim HaKadosh explains, normally, we're always worried about surplus. Whenever you have a surplus in a country, the price of that item goes down, right? So what do? Either you sell it out of the country. This was the Russian wheat deal. We had 20 years of surplus stored away because we're not going to offer it to the market because the price will drop so low, it'll be worthless. You can't sell it for very much. See, or they used to burn crops. They would burn the crops to keep a limited supply on the market, so they're able to sell for more. That's what it is. The level of plenty that came to Egypt, they've had years of plenty, but this plenty was out of the ordinary. It was so godel. There's going to be a great plenty. What happens when people see this? They work a year, 2 years, they stop. They said, this makes sense, because if we continue, we're going to put ourselves out of business. Because there's going to be so much surplus, you can't sell for anything. So what do? The third year, they're not going to plant and not plow. For the next, who knows how many years they're going to let it go. They're not going to do anything. So therefore, Yosef instructed Paro, you have to have people to oversee the property, to make sure they plow, they sow, they reap, and they store it away. What's the reason? The first beginning dream was plenty, the second was famine. And how bad was this famine? The famine was to such a degree, it says that when the emaciated cows swallowed the larger cows, it wasn't noticeable. That's how severe the second famine is going to be. If people are not forced to do the agriculture, you know what's going to be? As much as they have, although they're convinced it's something beyond their imagination, they're not going to survive for the next 7 years. Because this famine is such a famine, the world has never experienced this kind of famine. So therefore, everything we're able to save and to cultivate from that land during 7 years plenty, we've got to maximize on it. Because even with the maximum, it may not be enough, or it will be enough only to cover it. Anything less, we're going to have problems. That's exactly what Yosef said to them. And that's what he said to Paro. Because of the severity of the famine, God is giving the refuah before the makkah. God always gives the remedy before the problem. The remedy is you have endless bounty. But what do you do with it? You got to be responsible. And you have endless opportunity. Well, I have enough. Knowing what's coming down the pike, as much as you have, it may not be enough. You have to take advantage. So that's firstly why the years of plenty preceded the years of famine, for that reason. The words, the solution found favor in the eyes of Paro, the eyes of all his servants. Paro said to his servants, could it be found a man of such dimension that the Spirit of God was with him, in him? What did he see? So peculiar, so exceptional that this is the Spirit of God. Genius. Have you ever experienced such a astute genius? A man with such clarity? He didn't say that. Ruach Elokimbo. The Spirit of God is in him. That's really what he was touched. He saw that Paro wasn't an ordinary person. Paro was the monarch of the largest, most advanced civilization in the world. See, in his life, he saw a lot. Seeing Yosef and his application of his ability, he says something like this we've never seen. This is outside the physical realm. This is Ruach Elokim. This is the Spirit of God within him. What's the reason? And we didn't finish. Yom Paro Yosef, Achre Hodi Elokim Oscho Eskoltos. After Elokim, the man's a pagan. But he said, but after Elokim has informed you of all this, that's an indication there's nobody who's the equivalent of you in brilliance and in processing and analysis. Nobody. Since God informed you, that's a confirmation. There's no one as brilliant and as able as you are. How? How do we know that? Maybe there is. And what does God informing have to to reveal there's nobody as brilliant and as analytical as he is. How do you know that? We read in terms of the building of the Mishkan, Belev kol chocham nosan chochma. In the hearts of the wise, he gave wisdom. To be able to deal with all the various production and abilities, whether it's woodcrafting, whether it's goldsmithing, whether it's silver, whether it's dyeing, whether it's weaving, whatever it is. Each one who was involved was an expert in that area. How did they become an expert? It was a miracle. God gave them, endowed them with the wisdom. But who was endowed with the wisdom? In the hearts of the heart that already contained wisdom, he gave more wisdom. So the Gemara says in Brachos, Hashem only gives wisdom to the wise, doesn't give wisdom to the foolish. Why? So the Medrash, beautiful Medrash says, there was an incident where one of the Amoroim, they met a matronly non-Jewish woman. And she says, I understand that God, when he endows people with wisdom, it's only to the wise, not to the foolish. You have to have a minimal degree of wisdom, which is why. So Rabbi Shua B'Chananya answers, he says, I want to ask you something. A person's a rich man. Who does he lend? Does he lend the man who's wealthy, or has a man of some degree of means, or the man who's impoverished? Who does he lend? She says, of course, to the man of means. She says, why? Of course, when you lend it to the man of means, you have a pretty good chance you're going to get paid back. You lend it you make the loan to the person who's impoverished. As much as he wants to pay back, he doesn't have the means to pay back. So he says, a person who has a semblance of wisdom is a gift. It's precious. What happens if that wisdom is going to be abused and desecrated? You don't want to give wisdom to that kind of person. So the person who's already wise, in what context will that wisdom be utilized? In a proper context. A person who has no wisdom, he's a fool. He'll take that genius and desecrate it. He'll become a card shark, he'll become a gambler, he'll become a gangster, whatever he'll become. But he won't utilize it in a constructive, proper context to advance it. Therefore, belev kol chacham lev. So to who did Hashem endow wisdom, more wisdom, that they should be adept and experts in each of their fields, whether it's dyeing, weaving, wood cutting, goldsmithing, whatever it may be, you already have to have wisdom. That's the Gemara. That's the Gemara and the Midrash. Paro says, have we ever seen a man who has the Spirit of God within him? Within moments. He interprets the dream, came up with a strategy, how to deal with the 7 years of plenty, how to prepare for the years of what? Of famine. Exactly. Have we ever seen a man with such spirit of God within him? Then he says, confirmation, ein novom v'chochom kamocha. There's no one as analytical, as insightful, and as wise as you are. Why? Why also, what does the Ruach HaElokim have to do with that? The answer is simple as we're saying. Why did God give him such a dimension of genius, of ability? The answer is because there's nobody as wise as you are. Because if you want to be that wise, God will not entrust you with this degree of wisdom. You know? Otherwise you become Mayor Lansky for the mafia. You understand? You run their affairs. Chas v'sholom. God should give Yosef wisdom to do anything which is not the ultimate to save the world. Yosef's plan saved the world. The whole region was dying of starvation. The famine affected the whole region. The only location that had plenty was only Egypt. All the surrounding countries had no plenty. So you will be the sustainer of existence. And he did it in the most responsible way. Why? Because God only gave you that ability because there's nobody as brilliant and as wise and as analytical as you are. That's a confirmation. He's not giving it to anyone else. You have to say, the Gemara tells us that everything in life, there's a balance, there's a counterbalance. As we pointed out, that who initially had thrown Avram into the kiln? Nimrod. Avram came out unscathed, unsinged. And Avram went and disseminated monotheism throughout the world. So who was the counterbalance to Nimrod? Avram was the counterbalance. As much as you're espousing your paganism and all your impure policies and positions, Avram on the other side is espousing Kedusha and purity and godliness and monotheism. That's the counterbalance. Proof that each one's the equivalent of the other. Because we had said, when did Avram Avinu die? Pass away. He passed away on the same day that Nimrod was killed. Esav killed Nimrod. On the day that he killed Nimrod, that's the same day he comes back from the field, Avram's no longer alive. This is the balance. But we've showed other situations. Yaakov and Esav, they came about, they were fighting in the womb, good and evil. You couldn't have an Esav being born and waiting 9 months for a Yaakov to be born. Just their representation of what they were, one represented holiness, the other one represented impurity. That's the counterbalance. Okay? That's continuous. So the Gemara says that we have time in the Tanoim, that they were able to deal with the Sadducees, to counter them, and the heretics, and the pagans. So why do we have that level of ability? Because God has to give us that ability to be the counterbalance to the evil. What happens when the negative is lessened? That it's minimized on our side. God continuously lowers the bar based on, he only gives us a level which we need to counter the negative. But if the negative is less, you don't have to be raised to another level, right? But it's interesting. So we see that, but if belev kol chacham, eating chachma, God endows the wise wisdom, why should be dependent on that, right? Because there it's the same thing. There it's only, why are you being endowed with this level of wisdom to counter sheker, right? And again, we're not concerned you may use that wisdom for something which is inappropriate. But more you're not going to get. In the Mishkan, how much degree of wisdom they had for what they needed? How much did they need? What level to be able to build the Mishkan? They should have the ability and the understanding how to develop the various components of the Mishkan. More than that, they didn't get. So the same thing. The Tanoim, the Amoroim, the level of Siyata Dishma wisdom that they were endowed with through Torah was only to the degree that they needed to maintain existence. More than that, they didn't get. They didn't get more than that. Paro says, because you are this exceptional person, one of a kind of a person, Atoti al basic, picho yishak, kol ami rakakise el meko. Therefore, you will oversee my household, and only through your command will you lead my people. However, only in regard to the throne am I greater than you. So, other than being called king, you're in control. Then it continues. Yomar Paro, Rei Nosati Osho Al Koletz. I want you to understand, I've appointed you over all Egypt. V'yosef Paro es tabato mel yodo. He took off his ring. V'iten osal yad Yosef, and he gave it into the hand of Yosef, which is an indication of passing of power. V'yalbush so big day sheish. He had fashioned for him linen garments. Yosef Revidazov al Tzavor. He put this golden chain, necklace around his neck. Okay? And his chariot would ride alongside his chariot. It means he's second in command. V'yomer Paro Yosef, Ani Paro. But he says, remember, I'm Paro. Ubeladech lo yorim ishes rosho esraglu chaytzra. Nobody will have a right to lift his hand or his leg, meaning, so the Targum says, nobody could carry a weapon unless you authorize it. Nobody is permitted to ride a horse unless you authorize that he has that horse. I mean, this is totally superfluous. He already says, it's all yours, I will sit on the throne. I'm the king. Then again, he reiterates this. Ani Paro. Yosef, but remember, I'm Paro. But without you, nobody could make a move. But remember, I'm Paro. What's this reiteration? Paro was no fool. Paro understood Yosef's capability. You could say, I'm the king, I sit on the throne. But it's just a question of time because of Yosef's one-of-a-kind of personality, his charisma, his scope, and what he encompasses. He's going to just go into the oblivion, Paro. He's going to fade out. He's going to be so overshadowed, it's like there's no Paro. They wouldn't even know who Paro is. And Paro was concerned about this. See, he already made his first thing. But Yosef, remember, I am Paro. I'm Paro. But you run the country. You could say from today, I'm Paro, but you know something, if he's running the country, he makes every decision, and he's of this dimension of ability, it's irrelevant what you say. But Paro was a genius. Vayikra Paro Shem Yosef Tzofnas Paneach. He gave him an unusual name. Tzofnas Paneach. What does Tzofnas Paneach mean? You reveal the hidden. And who does he give him as a wife? Osnas bas Potiphar Koino. Osnas. The daughter of his master when he was a slave. Now, people have short memories. And over time, for sure, they forget. People say, how did this man? He's not an original Egyptian. How did he ever achieve that level? They won't remember Paro, you know something. You know, he climbed to that level. You know who put him there? Because there was an incident. Paro, the king of Egypt, had a dream, and he took him out of a pit, out of a dungeon, and because he interpreted his dreams, that's why he's there. So if his name is Tzofnas Paneach, no one will ever forget where his humble beginnings began, and who put him there, and what was even before that humble beginning. He was a slave. Do you know who his wife is? The daughter of his previous master. So as a result of this, he's locking it in the way to guarantee that he will never be forgotten. I will always be on the throne. You're always second in command, and you will never rise above me, regardless of your capability. Everybody will always know who you are and who I am.